Alright guys, welcome back to Legends of Evil, where I talk about the villains outside of the comic books. And this time around, we're going to talk about XANA from Code Lyoko. Now, obviously this image right here is not XANA, but it is one of his many monsters and one of the things he works through. You see, XANA isn't so much a who as he is a what. XANA is the main villain from the show Code Lyoko, and calling him Skynet would be kind of an understatement because Skynet wishes it was XANA. You see, XANA was created by a man named Dr. Franz Hopper, who is the father of one of the characters, Aelita, and his team and him created XANA as an AI program. However, the government wanted, this shadow organization wanted to, and the government wanted to make XANA into something more. However, things happened, XANA became self-aware, and became a monster, and became a horrible thing. Now, the interesting thing about XANA is that while he is inside the supercomputer, and he's an AI program, XANA is actually able to traverse, the digital world and into the material world. He uses these ghosts to possess living objects. He can possess people, he can possess animals, plants, he can even shut off gravity. Like, seriously, no, really. There was an episode where he just, switched off gravity. And another time where he just made the school start to sink in on itself. Now, the big thing is that he can only do this an X amount of times before the whole Return to the Past thing. Also, I'm convinced Mrs. Hertz was in cahoots with XANA. No, really. Every time, throughout the first season and some of the second, whenever she had a class and talked about how, such and such thing was dangerous, XANA would come in and just take it and make it dangerous. I'm low-key convinced that, I'm convinced that, Hertz was low-key working for XANA and just telling him all this shit so XANA could just go right in and take it for himself. XANA is also, even though he had no physical body, he worked through several objects. He worked through such things as, his monsters, which range from the mega-tanks to mantas. XANA was more like a monster in the shadows, essentially. He was this big threat that the Lyoko team had to take out. Because, honestly, XANA could have done whatever the flying fuck he wanted. The other thing that a lot of people have thought about with XANA is that, every time we had Return to the Past, XANA was defeated. Yes and no. While Return to the Past did manage to defeat XANA for one scheme, however, it had a bit of a backfire. That backfire was that XANA, in Return to the Past, got stronger. Hence, his power over the material world could actually, be amplified every Return to the Past. And there was a time where they were not doing it anymore, but Jeremy kept using it to help himself get smarter to, ace all these tests he was having. Also, Ulrich used it once, so yeah, XANA, but let's be honest, admit it, you would be tempted to use, something that could, essentially have time travel on your side. But there was a cost that, they didn't realize this until later on, and hence why they really stopped trying to do Return to the Past, was that, while they managed to stop XANA this time, XANA would just come back and his monsters would be even stronger. So that was kind of the takeaway, where they had to be extra careful now that they couldn't use Return to the Past as much as they could. They couldn't just MacGuffin their way out unless they wanted to make their enemy even stronger. That was a really that's a really scary thought, where you really have to just fight your way out of this situation, but if you can't, you have to use Return to the Past, but there's a problem. Next time you face your enemy, he could kill you even harder this time. Sorry, I got a bit of a stuffed nose. But that's the thing about XANA, is that, no matter what the only way they could stop XANA officially was shutting down the supercomputer. But XANA was already 10 steps ahead of everybody, in that XANA essentially planted a piece of himself into Aelita when she became real, when she joined the material world again. So to stop, to kill XANA would mean to kill Aelita. he also needed Aelita to take away her memories because he needed them. He was also, for the longest time in the final season, building his own army and had his own Colossus that he could control. But the closest thing we ever got to a physical body with XANA was when they brought in the new Lyoko warrior, William, and William was taken over by XANA, and was kind of like XANA's herald in a way. He was essentially like XANA's herald, as well as he's kind of like the closest thing XANA had to a real body. Now, it is kind of theorized in some cases, and this is nothing official, mind you, but a lot of people have kind of made this speculation that perhaps the whole thing, what XANA really wanted, was his own physical body, to be like Aelita, in that he wanted to be something human. But it was very obvious that he didn't know much about humanity himself. He had little to no idea how to handle basic humanity. In that, remember when he created a world within Code Lyoko that masked, that essentially looked like the real world that he tricked Odd, Yumi, and Aelita in to look like, and he still had no idea. He only had a finite amount of knowledge about the physical world. So that was that's kind of the thing, is that, that theory might prove a little hold, in that he wants to be he wants to be a lot more human, but I don't know if that's the real case. I could believe it, because it seems like, I want to be part of your world, except rather than marry a prince and lose my voice, I'm going to rule it. I'm going to essentially come to your world and rule it, because it is nothing but chaos out there, so I want it for my own. If anything, XANA's more like he's not so much Skynet, although there is a total Terminator episode in Season 1, because it's totally Terminator. Like, there was an episode that was totally ripping off Alien. But anyway, XANA kind of reminds me more of Ultron, in that he wants to go to Earth, not so much to be like them, but more like to, replace humanity with his own, be the new god, and have machines take over. Because he's like, humanity is pretty much chaotic, it's messy, it's uncontrollable, I'm gonna step in and start over. So that's kind of the thing, is that XANA, and that's kind of the other thing, is that that's kind of what XANA wanted. But yeah, I digress. XANA is also, like I said, XANA has so many vast abilities that he could conjure, as well as monsters he could create. His home base, they kind of establish as Carthage. That's like the heart of XANA. But we don't really see a lot of his creatures other than the Megatanks and the Schizozoa, and the Mantas in that world. I think there was also, like, Creepers. I think they were called that. If I remember right, they were called Creepers. But XANA met his end in the final episode of Code Lyoko. That is until we got the live-action / animated series, which, guys, I tried watching that. I couldn't do it, unfortunately. If you enjoyed the show, Code Lyoko Evolution, that's totally fine. I got no problem with you. Me personally, I just couldn't do it. Anyway, so XANA is a monster in the shadows, and that's the other thing, is that you can't, XANA's not a villain that the Lyoko warriors could just walk up and punch. He was everywhere. He was in the, digital war, he was in Lyoko, and he had he could project himself through, a gaseous cloud, or just listen in via, I don't know how, to, essentially look in and see the world, and see what's going on in the world. He was this entity, this monster in the shadows that, that was always felt like he was sometimes one step ahead of everyone else, because it was almost like he planned everything to go down how he saw fit. And that's really kind of scary. So there you go, guys. That is pretty much all I have to say about XANA. Really cool villain. But you guys tell me in the comments below, what did you guys think of XANA? Did you guys like him? Did you guys hate him? Did you want to see a physical form of him or not? Or were you kind of just him with fine being a monster? Just a digital monster? Comment below, let me know, and once again, hope you all enjoyed this.